everything is holy now. Can you relate? Truly believing that everything is holy now? Okay, let me ask that again. Can you relate? Truly believing that everything is holy now. Yeah. At least willing to believe it then. There you go. Well, today is an exciting Sunday for me because it's the opportunity where we kick off our 7-week fall study series. Not only are we talking about a particular idea on Sunday, but we gather in small groups if you'd like to, or you can do this on your own, but we have study questions there inserted inside your bulletin, and we get to go deeper in this material. There's something magical that happens when you come together with others, and you see and are seen, and you share your stories, and it just opens our heart to love. The book that I've chosen this year is the book titled This Life is Joy, Discovering the Spiritual Laws to Live More Powerfully. It's about wisdom traditions that are found in many different spiritual venues, so to speak, and how Roger Teel has distilled these down into 7 ideas. We're going to look at these. Roger Teel is the senior minister at the Center for Spiritual Living, the Mile High Church in Denver. I think we've got some folks that just recently moved here from there. But he's an amazing individual, and his church has really grown over the years because he has an incredible heart, and he walks his talk, and I find his book very engaging. Just to give you an idea of what the next 7 weeks will be about, here are the 7 pillars of truth, as he calls them. This instant is love. This being is light. This world is consciousness. This idea is substance. This relationship is oneness. This journey is surrender. And this life is joy. And so we're going to enter into this together that, spirituality is a wonderful thing. But if it remains lip service, it doesn't do us or our world a lot of good. If it's just simply a feel-good spirituality, it just really remains at that surface level. I truly believe that we are being called, and there's a cry going out, and people are being impelled from within to really go deeper into the awareness of their spiritual truth, to go deeper in spirit, and to have a wider reach out into our world. Would you agree that it's time for a wider reach of love to wrap around our world? And so that is what this is about, and to calling ourselves higher. And so we begin this week, This Instant is Love. So it begins with, Roger sets the book up by talking about, he sort of gives a fable about the proverbial seeker. The scriptures say seek and find. We all realize what it is to be a seeker. And he says that we seek for more because we're made of more. And I love that line because I see more as an acronym, the magnificent one revealing and expressing. And the more that we're called to be is actually to become. It's not acquiring more stuff, it's expressing more of what we already are. And as long as you're here and you have skin on, we're in it. You're in the game. You're here to realize, actualize more. And so he talks about this seeker with the realization seeking more, but it takes a while before the seeker begins to realize that it's not so much about finding as it is about becoming. And so that's the premise that he lays down, is that what we are called to do is to become, that we are already the likeness and image of God, and yet to actualize it, embody it, that which we are in spirit is to bring it to life, all that God is, to bring it to life. And so he shares his story. He talks about when he was 6 years old, on a particular summer day, his father had just mowed the lawn. How many of you like the smell of fresh cut grass? Yeah, there's just something about that. So his father had just mowed the lawn, and he said as a kid he remembered that smell, and he just laid down in the grass, and he was looking up at the sky and the trees. And then something happened without him realizing it happened. All of a sudden, he was no more Roger the boy. He was the sky, the tree, the birds that he saw. He entered into this incredible experience of oneness. And he said he didn't know how long it lasted, but he remembers all of a sudden feeling dizzy. He was on the ground. He said he literally grasped a hold of the grass. And when he stood up, he was dizzy and a bit disoriented and afraid. He didn't know what had happened to him. Well, years later, he came to understand that as a oneness experience, a unitive experience. How many of you have had at least a piece of that, where your sense of being the individual sort of leaves and you become a part of all that is? How many of you have felt at least a piece of that? So he talks about having that at 6 years old. And about that same time, he got an interest in going to church. His parents didn't go to church, but in the town in which he lived, he could walk to a number of different churches, and so they let him go. And he said he loved being in the field of spirit, but it wasn't long before he started listening to what he was hearing. And what he was hearing didn't really match what he was feeling, and so he just disconnected and unplugged. And it would be years later before he would find his way back into a church again. So he tells that story of oneness, and then he steps to the next story. Now he's 29 years old. His mother discovered New Thought, the Center for Spiritual Living, and Roger was one of the youngest ministers. By the time he was 29 years old, he had been a minister of the Center for Spiritual Living. He was very successful, admired, looked upon with just people really respected who he was. He had a beautiful girlfriend. It was just before Christmas, and he had asked her to marry him. She said yes. They were going to announce it at the beginning of the new year. So she goes home for Christmas to Ohio, comes back, he picks her up, and he notices that she doesn't quite seem like herself, but he doesn't think a lot of it until the next day when he gets home from work and she's moved out and took all of her stuff. So he realizes, okay, there was really something wrong there. I probably should have asked. And she left, she took everything, leaves, and he's devastated. She leaves a note and just says, Roger, I just realized that I can't get married. This relationship is not for me. Please don't contact me. I'm serious. Our relationship is over. Well, of course, he contacts her. You know, you want to have that, or you try to contact. So he called her mother. She had gone back home, but the mother said, Roger, she's serious. I don't know what has happened, but she's over it, and she's not interested in talking to you. She's definitely not interested in getting married. So, son, I just encourage you, get on with your life. And so he said at 29 years old, for really the first time, he had to deal with incredible pain and loss and failure. Getting ready to just announce their wedding, he loved her, and now all of a sudden everything is not working. So he's going through the motions. He says on Sunday, he keeps it together. He does the best he can, but inside he's not yet really well equipped to deal with this. Have you noticed that life tends to bring up for you stuff that you're not yet well equipped to deal with? And that what happens is that it's because you're ready to bring forth something new. But wouldn't it be great if we could remember that at the time we're struggling with not being equipped to go through it? So he finds himself in this place, and he was just so getting to the point from sadness to anger, and now he's calling her names and just making her the matter with him. So one day he says he's actually out and he's having a drink with a buddy of his, a good friend, and he's just really letting it out about her. And the friend says, hey, Raj, you're a minister, and I hear you talk about these New Thought principles and stuff. Have you ever considered trying them? He writes in his book, in that moment, I wanted to knock him off the bar stool. But he said, I couldn't because it was right. He was right. And in that instant, he realized, I need help. You see, there's something very powerful when we realize I need help. That's one of the most empowering places we could be, is to realize I need help. Here is the point of stepping out of victim consciousness and into the consciousness of who you are as the likeness and image of God. And so he began to get help, and he shares in his book a number of things that he did. One thing, he found this great teacher on love and how you open your heart, and so he paid money and he went to this retreat only to find out that they drop you off in the desert to be by yourself for 2 days. And so that you can go within, and he said he was so angry, and he's in the desert, and he's cursing and screaming, and he's supposed to find a spiritual teacher, and he sees a rabbit goes by, and he said, you're just going to die anyway, and he's walking around kicking and grumping, and finally by the second night he just lies down and he begins to sob. He cracks open, he begins to sob. And in that moment he looks up at the sky, and that same feeling that he had at 6 years old, it's as if when he cracked open, something opened and he fell back into that space. Really, he opened so that he may become an expression of that space again. He said he looked up at the stars, and just all of a sudden, something in him opened, and he began to feel something pouring through him. And he realized, I have to learn to keep my heart open. And so at 29 years old, that was part of his journey, and a big part of his life has been about learning to keep his heart open. If you met Roger, you'd agree he's done a beautiful job. And he's helped and mentored many other people in learning to keep their heart open. Because to keep our heart open is to allow all that we are to express freely through us. And so his first lesson, the first mantra, the affirmation is, this instant is love. Would you say that with me? This instant is love. And so today we look at and bring awareness to the fact that we tend to harden our heart. We close off. We lower our expectations. And how does it happen? It happens in many ways, but this thought occurred to me this week. I remember when I was a kid, my mother I'm still blessed to have my mom and dad, but she always made sure we had breakfast before we went to school. But my sister and I loved cereal. We wanted to eat cereal. So we would have these cereal boxes. My sister and I are only 18 months apart. I'm the older of the two. That's important. And so we would remember on the back of the cereal boxes, those things you could get if you saved enough box tops. How many of you remember that? Yeah, I mean, it could be these different things. If you got enough box tops and you came up with like $1.25 or something and you could mail it in, you'd get this prize. Well, we ate a lot of cereal because we wanted those box tops, and I wanted this and my sister wanted that, and I just remember there was this thing on the back of the box I really wanted. So I finally got enough box tops and enough money, and I mailed it off. I'll never forget the day I came home and I had mail. And there it was, the package, and I was so excited, and I opened it up and I took it out, and I'm like, this is it? And I went to the pantry in the kitchen and I opened up that box and I held it up, and the picture was a whole lot bigger than this thing. And I'm like, this is it? Can anybody relate? It's like, this is such a poor representation for what I thought I was getting. This is such a poor representation for what I thought I was buying. Can you relate? And I'm an eternal optimist. Recently, how many of you have seen that video about the stuff you put under your eyes and you fan and you have no wrinkles? It does not work. I'm the proud owner of 3 bottles of something. It does not work. Fess up. Anybody else? There's a lot of us. So it's like, gosh, I hate being disappointed, don't you? I just hate it when that happens. I really wanted to see that magic. I mean, that was going to be amazing. I was going to come in here and go like, wow, you look young. What have you done? So what tends to happen from the cereal boxes to the wrinkle cream, that we get disappointed, you know? And have you realized that you've lowered your expectations? Because without even realizing it, you know, my sister and I were like, I'm not even eating cereal anymore. That stuff, it doesn't, because we were so disappointed that we were promised this. And we got this disappointing representation of what we thought we were getting. Throughout the course of our life, we literally buy things, but more importantly, we so often buy into things, only to discover that we got a poor representation of what we thought we were getting. And for many people, at some point in time, they even come to feel about themselves that they are a disappointing representation of who they could be or should be. And so consciously or unconsciously, everybody walks around with some of this. And it's human nature, without us even noticing it, what begins to happen is we lower our expectations. We begin to guard our heart. We don't play full out. We don't put our whole self out there because we've been disappointed one time too many. Can you relate? Well, the thing about that is, in the spiritual realm, there is no person that's ever going to let us down. And so when we transfer this, just because I didn't get the thing on the box that I wanted, just because the wrinkle cream is a scam, doesn't mean that in the realm of spirit, that we get what we're promised, and that we're always promised that as we give, so we receive. As we open our heart, as we play full out, we cannot hold back ourselves. And it doesn't take much to look around this world and realize if the people in this room, who I believe are kind of on the leading edge of bridging a new world, if we in here cannot play full out and put our whole self in and believe that love can turn this around, we're going to be in a mess. So are you willing to play at a higher level? Are you willing to put yourself in? I'm really inviting you for the next 7 weeks to let go and to tell yourself, I'm going to play full out. I'm really going to put my whole self in. And it begins with realizing this instant is love. It's instant in love. It's about taking ourselves into love's awareness any and every time we feel ourselves moving into a place of separation, of defensiveness, of shutting ourselves off. And it's human nature to get caught up in that trance of separation, as Roger calls it. He said, are you dancing with the divine, or are you in the trance of resignation and separation? And so when we feel ourselves numbing out in the trance of separation, the mantra for the trance of separation is, that's just the way it is. And so when you catch yourself saying that, we have to say, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to step out of the trance of separation because this instant is love. And I choose to align with love, and I choose to be willing to bring forth whatever is needed to heal, reveal, to bring forth the kingdom of heaven right here and right now. So how do we do this? I personally like to look to Scripture, the Christian Scripture, as well as many other sacred texts. I grew up Pentecostal, so I know quite a bit about the Bible, but I reached a point in my life I threw the whole thing out because I didn't believe what I had been told about it. And then I arrived at a new understanding. I see it now as this metaphysical, mystical information about consciousness. It's about our conscious evolution from Adam consciousness, from the individual that's separate, that's powerless, to the Christ, to the I am, to one that is fully outright expressing all that is. And so when we can look at these stories in that context, it helps us bring aspects of all that we are to life. The story I want to highlight today is called the story of the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. How many of you remember, you've heard that story? Let's take a look at the story. It's found in the Gospel of John. It says, Jesus went through Samaria. Now, to his audience, when the audience heard Jesus went through Samaria, that would have been, they're like, oh no, the story's not going to end well, because the Samaritans were half-breed. The Assyrians intermingled with the Hebrews, and therefore, according to the Jews, contaminated the bloodline. So the Samaritans were the intermingled, and they were the outcast. So he sets this story up purposefully to get his audience to, first of all, start thinking, those that you think are outside of God's love, I'm going to show you that's not the case. And so he starts by saying something dramatic. Jesus went through Samaria. Eventually he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, where Jacob's well was. He was tired from a long walk, and he sat down by the well at noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water. And Jesus said to her, please give me a drink. He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised. You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink? He replied, if you only knew the gift that God has for you, you would ask me. She says, but sir, you don't even have a rope and a bucket, and this well is very deep. How are you going to give me water? He said, I'm talking about a living water, a water that anyone that drinks of this living water is never going to have to come to this well. They're never going to thirst again. And she said, I want some of that. Now, she still thinks he's talking about magic water. I want some of that magic water. And he realizes she hasn't yet got it. So now he says, go and get your husband. And she replied truthfully, I don't have a husband. She said, you are right. You don't have a husband, but you have had 5 husbands, and the one you are living with now is not your husband. So you spoke the truth. Now her eyes are open, and she realizes, okay, I'm talking to a seer. I'm talking to a prophet, a holy man here, because he's just seen something about me. He can see who I am. she said, "You must be a prophet. So tell me." And they began the longest dialogue that Jesus had with anyone in the Bible. So this is the longest recorded dialogue. It's very significant. What they begin to talk about is, where is the proper place of worship? Because you're Jew, I'm Samaritan, we have our place of worship, the Jews have theirs. They enter into this basic dialogue, and Jesus eventually says, the kingdom is within you. She still can't quite grasp it, but in his presence of love, something about her has shifted. They talk long enough that love reaches her heart. She's open, she's transformed. The scriptures say that she leaves her cup, she runs into the village. Everyone that sees her recognizes, you have been changed. They convinced Jesus to stay 2 more days and teach all of the people, because what they saw in her was so transformational. Now, what makes this woman so unique? In that particular time, the well was a gathering place for women in particular. It was like the social place. Women would go in the morning. They would all gather their water for the day while it was still cool. They would socialize and go back to their homes. Then they'd come late in the evening after the sun was going down, when it wasn't so hot again, get more water for the night and go back. Why did this woman go at noon? Because she was an outcast. She had been married 5 times. That was unheard of in that culture. So not only was she Samaritan, she was someone that was despised, that was shunned. So here he is connecting with sort of the lowest of the lowest. He's connected with a person who goes out of her way not to run into anybody else, because she's so sick and tired of them looking down on her and condemning her. It is at that place love reaches her. You see, that's the first thing this story tells us, is that wherever you are, there is love. That there's no such thing as hiding from love. There's no such thing as having to fix this and then you find love, or fix that. It's simply a shift in perception. It's realizing this instant is love. Wherever I am, love is. That's a huge shift. When we can realize that wherever I am, love is, let me be an open channel to that love. There's a scripture that says, I believe, help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief. It's kind of funny if you think about it. The person says, I believe, but help my unbelief. Well, the person is saying, there's a part of me believes, and there's a part of me that doesn't believe. Well, I want to believe in love. I want to believe love is this instant, but help my unbelief. So the first thing that happens is this woman, love finds her. And love is always there wherever we are. It just calls us to expand our awareness of who we are. The second thing that this story teaches us is that Jesus did not judge. He saw her, but he did not judge her. You see, love sees us, knows everything about us, because love only sees itself. But love does not judge. It can't judge. Love is asking us to see us as love knows us and sees us, to see us as love, and to not judge ourselves, and to be willing to show up in that capacity. The next thing that this story teaches, when she enters into this dialogue with him about, well, where is the kingdom? And he basically points her back within, that the kingdom is within you. It's not something so much you're searching for, it's something that you're here to let out. You're here to let it out. A number of years ago, in one of my ministries, as soon after I arrived, I had a woman who after every Sunday would send me a long email about everything that happened. And she even said in one email, I have you on a pedestal. Now that's scary, because if you're on a pedestal, there's only one place to go. That's all. But I also know it's not so much about me, it's about the person putting anybody or anything on a pedestal. So repeatedly I said, don't put me on a pedestal. But she would send me these long emails, high praise, constantly on a pedestal. Well, the time came when she then one day came to me and said, I want to sing in a Sunday service. And so I directed her to our music director. It wasn't long before he directed her back to me. He said, you do not want her singing in church. And I thought, oh my Lord, you see this coming. So we tried a couple of things, but let's just say singing was not her gift, especially to be the special music. It takes something to be special music. So I had to lovingly say, well, that's not necessarily your gift. Well, all she heard was, I didn't like her. So the next thing, I get an email, and she said, well, if there's one gift to be found in all of this, you are no longer on my pedestal. So, you have to learn, if you're not going to give into the praise, you can't get swept away by the judgment, the criticism. You just have to, know in your heart. But it's always hard when those kind of things happen. And so, what can you do? And she got angry and left, and I felt bad, but what could I do? So a couple of years go by, I've left the church, and I get an email from this lady who tracks me down. It was the sweetest email. She said, I need to pick up on the story where it left off. She said, you gave me a great gift in standing in the truth. She said, the truth of the matter is I wasn't qualified to be a special singer. And I met with a counselor and started journaling about how you were wrong with me. And she said, in my journaling, I discovered that I have a gift for writing. And she was coming to share with me that some of her work was now being published. And it was beautiful. But the thing she said was, I want to thank you for pointing it back to me. She said, because as long as you were on the pedestal or off of the pedestal, it was keeping me from being in the game for myself. And she said, when you fell off the pedestal, you let yourself fall off the pedestal, she said, I eventually had to find my own light, my own love, and let it shine. You see, that's what love is always trying to do. It's reaching every single one of us to say, you can't hold yourself back. You've got to let your own light shine. It doesn't matter what this person did or doesn't do. It doesn't matter what this person thinks of you or doesn't think. It's about being willing to put it out and put it all out there. Mary Morrissey, who's a great spiritual teacher, tells a time that she learned this great lesson from her 7-year-old granddaughter. Mary was living in California. Her granddaughter, she was spending time with her one day, and the granddaughter wanted to go to this amusement park that mostly had roller coasters. Mary wasn't all that excited about that, but she agreed to go with her granddaughter. And there was this one roller coaster called California Scream that was the worst. And so, of course, that's where her granddaughter wants to go. So they get in line, and you know how the switchbacks, the lines go like this. And her little 7-year-old granddaughter is looking, and she's rocking back and forth, and she's afraid, and she doesn't know what she wants to do. And Mary said, well, honey, you see that sign that says EXIT? Even if we're ready to get on the roller coaster, we can always just go to that sign, EXIT. We don't have to get on this. And Mary said, I was secretly praying that she wanted to go to the sign that said EXIT. But the remarkable thing, she said, as they got closer and closer, and her little granddaughter could really see what was going on, because as people, they'd strap them in on the roller coaster, and the roller coaster would go like it's building steam. And then in 4 seconds, it went from 0 to 60. So people's face went like that. And they witnessed that happen, the centrifugal force. And so when her granddaughter could really see that, now she's really nervous, and she asked again, this is the question. She said, Grandma, how do we make ourselves think so that the part of us that wants to go forward can win over the part of us that is afraid? How do we make ourselves think so the part of us that wants to go forward can win over the part of us that is afraid? Isn't that powerful? And Mary said she had to dig deep, and she said, well, honey, this is when you just have to get bigger. You have to realize that there's something breathing you. There's something beating your heart, that there's more to you that meets the eyes, that you are an expression of God, and you have to just get bigger. And she said, okay, Grandma, let's get bigger and let's get on. So they got on. And Mary said, it's called the California Scream for a good reason, because they're about halfway through, and Mary's screaming her head off. And her little granddaughter leaned over and said, Grandma, just get bigger. Richard. And I love that, because love is always calling us to get bigger, to just get bigger. To realize that love is wherever we are. Love doesn't judge us, but love sees us. Love is always redirecting us back in to say, you are called to bring forth something. And when you find yourself being hurt by praise or criticism, or closing yourself off, what am I here to bring forth? Help me connect with the bigger part of all that I am, and help me bring it forward. To realize that we're bringing forth what we're made of. The final story, Reverend Howard Caesar, a Unity minister, had a granddaughter who's 2.5 years old. This little granddaughter loved costumes, and she loved Superwoman. She got her mom to buy a costume of Superwoman. The next morning when she got up, she's like, I'm Superwoman. I want to wear that costume. So her mom puts her on the bed, gets the little costume on, and she goes, me no fly, mama. She said, me no fly, mama. And her mom said, I finally had to begin to talk to her about the fact that, honey, you are not your costume. And I thought, life is about coming to realize we're not our costume. It's about bringing forth what's inside. And that the only way to fly is to connect with that part of us that is bigger, and that is love. Not love that, we use the word I love for everything, to I love potato chips, to my animal, to my spouse, to my this. We use it for so many things that we forget what it means that love is the essence of life. And that it is this presence that heals us and opens us, that when we feel like that what's showing up is a poor representation of what we expected, what we wanted to be, is to step out of that trance of separation and choose to be that presence of love. In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry slip away from me. I open my eyes to see. Would you join me? There is only love. There is only love. Love that's here. Love that sets us free. There is